He left her on a rainy Tuesday, his voice cold as the coffee between them. 10 years of marriage discarded like last season's fashion. I've fallen in love, he said, with someone who still knows how to dream. Her hands trembled, but she smiled. Because tears would give him victory. The younger woman waited in the car, lipstick bright as betrayal. And as he walked away, umbrella in hand, she realized she had built his empire, piece by piece, only to be replaced in the home she designed. But life, cruel and poetic, had other plans. Because when the world thinks you're finished, fate sometimes whispers, "Not yet." And on that same street where she was left behind, someone far more powerful was watching. A man who didn't see a discarded woman. He saw fire. He saw rebirth. Before the fall, Amelia Hartley had everything. A husband who kissed her forehead before work, a penthouse overlooking the city she helped him conquer, and a name, Mrs. Jonathan Hartley, that carried weight in every boardroom she walked into. She had traded her 20s for his dreams. Late nights designing presentations, charming investors, balancing books he didn't know how to read. She believed in him when no one else did. She built him from the ground up until the world started calling him the genius. Then came her, the intern with the sunshine laugh and ambition painted red on her lips. Jonathan said she reminded him of Amelia before the spark faded. He said it jokingly, but the words stayed like poison under the skin. The meetings became late nights. The late nights became weekends away. And one day, the ring was gone from his hand. When Amelia found out, she didn't scream. She stood there quiet, elegant, breaking inside like glass under velvet. He said he'd grown tired of walking on eggshells around her sadness. That he needed someone light, someone who made him feel young again. Her name was erased from the company's website, her access revoked. Even her favorite assistant turned away, loyalty sold for promotion. And when the divorce papers came, they called it amicable. As if betrayal could ever be polite, she signed her name with steady hands, though her heart was bleeding ink. Watched him walk away with everything she had built, her love, her years, her name. Only the silence remained. But silence has a strange way of shaping storms. And deep within that quiet, something ancient stirred, not anger, not despair, something stronger. The first spark of rebirth. Amelia disappeared, not into darkness but into silence. She sold the penthouse, the designer clothes, the glittering cage that once defined her. For 6 months, she lived in a small cottage by the sea, where no one knew her name. Every morning, she walked the shoreline barefoot, letting the salt sting her wounds. Every night, she burned old photographs one by one until the past became ash. She cried until she didn't need to anymore. Then, she rebuilt herself quietly, deliberately. She studied again. Business, law, negotiation. The subjects she once let her husband handle while she played the perfect wife. Now, she learned to handle herself when the world wasn't watching. Amelia Hartley became Amelia Rhodes, a woman with a new name, a sharper mind, and a heart that no longer begged to be loved. Her pain became her weapon, her silence, her strategy. And then fate returned. At a charity gala in the city, she met him. Alexander Voss, billionaire investor, ruthless, magnetic, alone. He spoke little, but his eyes saw everything, including the shadows behind her calm. He didn't see a broken woman. He saw resilience, the kind forged in fire. And for the first time in years, Amelia felt seen, not used. He offered her a position in his company, high level, demanding, perfect for someone like her. People underestimate women who've been hurt, he said, signing the papers. They mistake pain for weakness. It's the opposite. Amelia smiled. Because he was right. She wasn't the same woman who had begged her husband to stay. She wasn't waiting for rescue. She was the rescue. And as the city lights shimmered through the glass walls of her new office, Amelia whispered to herself, this time, they'll remember my name. 2 years later, she returned. Different name, different power. Same city. Amelia Rhodes, Chief Financial Officer of Voss Global. Her signature now opened doors that once slammed shut in her face. Her elegance was the same, but the softness was gone, replaced by precision, like glass sculpted into a blade. At her first major business summit, she saw him, Jonathan, her ex-husband, Still charming, still smiling too wide, but older now, thinner. His company struggling after a string of bad investments, the ones she used to warn him about. He didn't recognize her at first. She wore her hair shorter, her voice steadier, her presence commanding. When he finally realized, his expression faltered just for a second before pride forced his smirk back into place. "Amelia," he said softly, tasting the name he no longer owned. "It's Miss Rhodes now," she replied, extending her hand, professional, detached, devastating. He wanted to talk. She declined. But fate, cruel and poetic as ever, wasn't done yet. A month later, Voss Global announced an acquisition. Hartley Enterprises, Jonathan's company, his lifeline. He reached out in desperation, pretending it was business. She met him across a long conference table. Alexander Voss sat beside her, silent, watching. She spoke numbers, logic, precision, the language Jonathan never learned. He tried charm. She answered with calm. He tried nostalgia. She met him with distance. When the deal closed, she shook his hand again. Same touch, different woman. He looked at her like someone realizing too late that the fire he'd thrown away had become the sun. And as they walked out, Alexander glanced at her. "You didn't even need to raise your voice," he said. "I don't burn bridges anymore," she replied softly. "I build empires." Amelia didn't yell. She didn't humiliate. She didn't need to. She had spent years sharpening her mind like a blade, and now the world was hers to wield. Jonathan's company, once a golden tower, was now a failing relic. Amelia orchestrated the acquisition with subtle genius. Not a single move betrayed her presence. Every financial misstep he had ignored, every risky venture he had mocked her for, she turned into leverage. The board of Hartley Enterprises voted unanimously to accept her terms. Jonathan realized too late that he wasn't negotiating with the woman he left behind. He was negotiating with a force he could no longer control. At the first shareholder meeting after the acquisition, Amelia walked in wearing a simple black suit. No extravagance, no need to flaunt. Jonathan's eyes widened. He wanted to speak, to charm, to reclaim. But she had already spoken in numbers, in strategy, in vision. The board nodded. Investors smiled. The deal closed in her favor. Jonathan tried one last card, apology, but she listened politely, eyes calm, heart steady. "Apologies don't rebuild companies," she said softly. "They just remind people who they lost." The younger woman he left her for? Gone. She had married someone else. The life Jonathan had built around the idea of replacing Amelia crumbled quietly, without spectacle. He felt the sting of regret, the one Amelia had felt for years, but she didn't savor it. She had outgrown bitterness. Her revenge wasn't cruelty. It was dignity. It was proof that a woman discarded could rise taller than the man who threw her away. It was quiet, undeniable power. When Jonathan walked out of the boardroom for the last time, his head lowered. Amelia didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had already won. And as she stepped outside into the crisp city air, Alexander's hand found hers. A reminder that some victories aren't about revenge alone. They're about reclaiming everything that was once lost with grace, intelligence, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the world sees you now exactly as you deserve to be seen. Amelia smiled, because revenge had been a whisper. Her life, her rebirth, was the roar. The city no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like hers. Amelia walked through the streets with calm steps, no longer haunted by echoes of the past. Every window reflected a woman reborn strong, composed, and free. Alexander was always beside her, a steady presence, never overshadowing, never demanding. He saw her as she was, brilliant, fierce, and human. He celebrated her victories, shared quiet moments, and challenged her to keep growing. Together, they were a partnership of equals, unshakable, unbreakable. Her days were no longer dictated by betrayal or loss. She built projects, mentored young women, and invested in dreams she believed in. The world that had once humiliated her now respected her. She didn't need to prove anything except to herself. Jonathan? She didn't avoid him entirely. Their paths crossed at business events, silent nods exchanged in passing. He looked different now, smaller somehow, and though he tried to meet her gaze, there was no fire left for him in her eyes. Amelia's heart was full, not with vengeance, but with life. She had learned that love could be gentle after betrayal, that trust could be rebuilt in the right hands. Her laughter returned, rich and unrestrained, echoing in halls where once only silence had lived. At night, she would stand by the terrace of her new office, city lights sparkling below, and feel the weight lift from her shoulders. The past was a story she had lived, not a chain she carried. She had become the author of her destiny. "And Alexander," he whispered often, softly, "you are unstoppable." She would smile, squeezing his hand. Yes, she thought, but only because I finally believed it myself. Freedom, she realized, was not about revenge or riches. It was about walking through life unafraid. It was about creating a love that honored strength rather than diminished it. It was about blooming louder, brighter, stronger without anyone else's permission. Amelia Rhodes had returned, not as a woman who was left behind, but as a force no one could ignore. They tried to bury her in silence, to rewrite her story as one of loss and despair. But she bloomed louder than the city lights, taller than the skyscrapers that had witnessed her pain. Every step she took was a declaration, every smile a quiet rebellion. The world had learned too late that you cannot dim a fire forged in betrayal and tempered in rebirth. Amelia Hartley was gone. Amelia Rhodes had arrived, and she carried the sun in her hands, unstoppable, unbroken, unforgettable.